And we are the Coalition, loud and proud, outrage porn free, civilly disobedient media broadcasting live on the worldwide Coalition Radio Network at coalitionradionetwork.com, facebook.com/the Coalition Radio, on the mighty Twitter at coalition_radio. Tonight's a special edition of the Coalition. Folks who observe international affairs were shocked and dismayed today to see an act of despicable violence take place in the island nation of Haiti. The President Moïse, was assassinated. His wife, assassinated and killed. His wife remains in critical condition. She was airlifted to the United States, to Florida, for medical attention. Anyone who's followed Haiti during our lifetimes has seen the turmoil, the pain, whether it be catastrophic weather events, whether it be despicable political acts like today, whether it be turmoil from ostensibly a variety of dictatorships. Amongst that turmoil and pain is the bright spot of the beauty of the nation itself, its people, many of whom have chosen to live in Rhode Island alongside of us, our brothers and sisters, and the indomitable spirit of the Haitian people who seem willing and capable to overcome just about anything. Joining us tonight live via the miracle of the internet are individuals who are no stranger to the Coalition audience. Aniece Germain is a city councilwoman for the city of Cranston and has graced us with her appearance on a number of occasions. Her husband, Dr. Norley Germain, is joining us as well. Both of them lead an organization in Rhode Island called Hope and Change for Haiti. And we wanted to bring them on because of their close connections, obviously, to the Haitian American community here in Rhode Island, as well as their ties to Haiti itself and the perspective that they can bring, which is obviously going to be a little different, perhaps a little bit more pained, intimately more personal than you'll get on sort of the talking head television and radio, who will confine their comments about the spectacular brutality of what happened, as well as an American perspective on foreign policy. Norley and Aniece, thank you so very much for joining us on what is clearly a difficult day for Haitians around the world.
Thank you, Pat, for having me this afternoon. It's always a pleasure to be in your show. But today is a particular day, as you mentioned. It's a sad day for Haitian people. It's a sad day for us. And I'm here with my husband and Dr. Noli Germain. We will share some our perspective on this scrupulous assassination of a president, of a sitting president that was elected democratically.
Right. If we could, let's open up the show. I always want to take every opportunity I can to discuss your organization that the two of you co-chair, Hope and Change for Haiti. Talk to us a little bit about their mission and what they've accomplished here in Rhode Island, both just from a general perspective, but also your organization has been very, very active in the response in Cranston and Providence around the state to the COVID inoculation and the COVID health challenges. So if you can give us a little bit of perspective of where you're coming from, and then we'll dive right into what's happening in Haiti.
Thank you, Pat, for having us. As a councilwoman, my wife Aniece Germain already stated, it's a pleasure to join you. Hope and Change for Haiti is an organization that was founded in 2016 after the Hurricane Matthew, because there were 1.5 million of people that were affected directly by the hurricane, but thousands of non-profit organizations who operated in Haiti that don't really reach the mountains, the rural areas. So when we were contacted by people from villages in Haiti, so that's how we started with Hope and Change for Haiti. Our mission is really to assist the Haitian community here in Rhode Island, where we work with undocumented people, immigrants, and also with women. So we advocate for women's rights and immigrant rights in Rhode Island. And also we promote cultural awareness here. But in Haiti, we focus on community development where we develop projects like housing. We build houses for people in the mountain, build systems so they can catch rainwater because they don't have access to clean other type of clean water. We developed a microfinance project to support women because most of the household they are single parents, and that single parents usually is a mother, not the father. And also we support in education. So that's mostly what we do. Last year, we've been working very hard in Rhode Island. The first thing was really with the census.
Yes, that as you mentioned, our work here, Dr. Nali just mentioned, our work here, it's mostly consists of advocacy services to immigrants family, and we participate actively in everything that has to do with human rights, but women rights, immigrants
Mm-hmm.
rights. So we know for the past year with COVID, we've been really involved in helping, with partnering with other organizations, and for example, DOCAS International and other organizations. We are part of the Governor's Council, Equity Council, where we bring the voice of our community to the table when they have to take decisions to make sure that our population, there is decision that is taken that has the culturally competency. So most of the time, as Noli mentioned, when we want to help people, we thought we have the solution, but we never sit down and talk to the person to know the social, cultural part in the solution making. And that's why when we were part of the council, we bring, the cultural part. Like Haitian do not like, for example, canned food, right? So
Mm-hmm.
we said instead of giving canned food to Haitian or a food that is already made, give the person the money and they have the choice to buy what they need based on the culture and tradition. So we were part of a program where we distribute $400 to undocumented people, when COVID hit. So people who are already undocumented could not benefit of the
Right.
state or federal money. So that's why there were a lot of organizations that put some money together to see how they can support those undocumented people who do not have legal status but who are living in Rhode Island. So we are really a big part of this program, and this program run over 3 or 4 months, right?
Yeah, well, no. Distributing money, we did that over almost 7 months. But you need to mention also, right now, it's been 3 months, 12 weeks since we're running a campaign awareness to encourage people in the community to take the vaccine. Because, in Rhode Island, not only in Rhode Island, around the US, including Haiti. So we don't have that culture where people believe in vaccines. So we put the advertisement, commercials together that's running some Haitian video in Creole, Haitian Creole, where we
Mm-hmm.
have leaders in the community be part of that campaign to encourage them to take the vaccine and to protect themselves from COVID.
Yeah, so we are part of this program, Crushing COVID in Rhode Island.
Excellent. I mean, the Haitian culture and the Haitian people who have come to the United States and come to Rhode Island are such an important part of, well, let's be blunt, our economy. I mean, so many folks of Haitian descent were the heroes on the front line in all sorts of service industries, as well as responding in a legendary manner in terms of healthcare. Without the Haitian community, it's fair to say that we would not be able to have executed so many of the initiatives to combat COVID. And so I certainly, as the station management here, as I love to say, I applaud your efforts to support those folks whose documentation may not be complete, because quite frankly, they're a critical part of our community and suffered greatly and exhibited a sense of sacrifice for the community that was astonishing to watch. So I applaud your efforts. And it's part of and it's part of the fabric of Rhode Island. There's so many great organizations. Well, I'm originally from the New York City area, and back in the 70s or so, when I was growing up in the New York City area, we often used to speak about New York City as being a melting pot, and because of the economics of New York City, the costs, it's still to a degree, but less so. When you look at communities like Providence and the greater Rhode Island, we are blessed here by an abundance of cultural influences, many of whom are first generation from literally around the world. And they enrich us in so many ways, not just because of the restaurants, which are great, not just because of the cultural vibrancy, which is wonderful, but they inject an energy into the economy which I don't think we give enough credit to, because of the work ethic and the willingness to engage at literally every level of the economy. So it's critical that we do what we can to support that sort of infusion of energy and strength and perspective, because it makes us what we are today, which despite the challenges we face in Rhode Island, I would argue that it is one of the great places to live in the United States. Let's take a look at what's happening in Haiti. You have to weep for the country. I mean, my God, I'm not sure at this point. I'd hate to say this because I'm sure something might else come along, but over the last 20 years or so, political instability, earthquakes, hurricanes, economic challenges in the world community, COVID, which obviously put a damper on whatever tourism economy still exists on this beautiful island of beautiful people. It just seems to be, since really the American colonial period, and I'm not pointing fingers, but I'm just saying, for the last few hundred years, there seems to be so much that comes down on this community. Give us some history, if you will. If you're old enough like I am, you go back to Papa Doc. But over the last, Tonton Macoots, we learned about them firsthand.
I have to mention, we are not old enough to talk about the experience of Papa Doc, but from what we heard, there is even we have been some turmoil, chaos, and all the problem we have in the country post Papa Doc. I don't think we can compare any government that post Papa Doc to the period of Papa Doc. So one thing I know is, like any person living in Haiti after Papa Doc, they will live to express their opinion. So and librement, right? With freedom, with liberty. So you can say whatever you want about the government. You can. So that's one of the aspects that I think that were gained from the past Papa Doc. But we are not really old enough to really explain exactly what was happening on the when those the Papa Doc and Baby Doc, his son, that were that left the power in 1986. So what I can say from what I've been witness since I was able to make my own critique, observe how politics played in Haiti, is one of the main problems. And unfortunately, um, mainstream media never ever talk about Haiti when there is no such critical moment like the assassination of a president, or like the Hurricane Matthew, or like the earthquake, or when they talk about Haiti, it's only when there is a huge uh, uh, catastrophe. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
they talk about Haiti for a week, and you heard about it, and after everything's gone, it's okay. But Haiti, what the first, how we can say Haiti, the first republic independent black in the world, the first nation that beat slavery, that dismantled colonialism in 1804, right 700 miles and 10 from Florida. How can it be this country that should be taught in every university in the world, the revolution, the Haitian revolution, that says, because Haiti gave a gift to the world, the word of liberty, the word of freedom, the word of we are each equals. Haiti gives those values, teach those values to the world. But because we dare, that's the part we are paying. That's the price we are paying as of a result of today, Pat, because we dare dismantle the slavery, because we dare dismantle colonialism, and to pay the price. All I have to mention, this is Aniece Germain. This is not the councilwoman that will say that, but since the independence of Haiti, our country here, United States, that's the truth, they never acknowledge Haiti independence because Haiti was a threat to the United States that still have slavery. So every other superpower country in the world, they have a coalition, not your coalition, to make sure to say to the world that Haiti is wrong. Haiti was wrong. If you try to have your independence, if you try to be free, this is how you're going to be. But I still believe, Pat, that even though all of those turmoil, we have a beautiful history, the most beautiful history in the world.
Mm-hmm.
And we have beautiful people, people who are resilient. We can get through this situation. And what is happening this morning, the assassination of the president of Haiti, is a result of a complicated political, social, political, economical situation in the country. It is complex. No one can explain it to you to say white and black what it is, but it's more complicated than that. So Haiti is in a chaos right now with the assassination of the president Jovenel Moïse, Mr. Jovenel Moïse, and his wife is being wounded as well, and she's receiving a medical care in Florida as of now. Right now, we don't know what will be fate, the fate of Haiti. But I do believe if some of Haiti's friends, they talk about friends, United States, Canada, friends, um, we should have a solution. The people have been suffered too much, and now we need to find a solution. And violence is not the answer.
Right.
And as Dr. King always said, darkness cannot drive out darkness.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened today is despicable, unacceptable. No one can justify the assassination of a president in any ways, whatever.
Right. Coming out of the dictatorships, Jean-Bertrand Aristide was a seminal figure, at least. And I understand, of course, I'm representing how they were portrayed to the United States. He was in and out of the presidency on a number of occasions. And it began a period of time where, from, say, the earliest of the 90s on up to the current time, there was a great deal of instability, if you will, in terms of the political structure. The current president who passed away today, who was assassinated, what was, and again, I can't even begin to pronounce some of these names properly, but he was a member of something called the Haitian Kale Party. What were his politics? How were the people, how they regarded him? And again, your primary point, by the way, is an important one. Regardless of how you felt about his politics, he was a democratically elected president, and as such, should never have been removed from this office in this manner. We're talking politically. Obviously, the brutality. None of us supports violence at any level, but again, you had a democratically elected president removed through violence. What was his political background? How was he regarded? And what, from your perception, were some of the events that might have led up to this horrible situation?
First of all, I need to mention we have that culture of instability in politics in Haiti. From 1804, January 1st, 1804, we gained our independence from France. We have had only one single president that completed his term. So from 1804 to now. But before 1990, because Jean-Bertrand Aristide was first elected in December 16, 1990, as the first democratic president elected in the country, because prior to that, either we had dictatorship or we had nomination for the president. So they didn't have a term limit. So that's why we couldn't say that someone finished the terms. As Aniece mentioned, it's very difficult to talk about Baby Doc and Papa Doc because we can only take from what our parents told us and what the people in the country told us and what we read from books. So we can take, but after Baby Doc, we experience it. I personally experienced the election of Jean-Bertrand Aristide in 1990. So everyone saw in Aristide like the new beginning for Haiti when he took power in February 7, 1991. But he only stayed there for 9 months before he get a coup and leave the country. However, he was a charismatic person, the savior of the Haitian people. That's how they saw him. But he received that with, the complicity of the United States. Everyone knows that in Haiti. So, but, after an embargo imposed to Haiti for 3 years, President Clinton promised that he would bring him back to Haiti if he was elected president of the United States. So that's what he did in 1994. He brought President Aristide back to Haiti. But you know what? Instead of saying he was elected for 5 years, they said, well, you were elected for 5 years, of course. You already completed 9 months, but you spent 3 years out. That's also included in your term. So you have only 1 year left. So that's why Aristide also, even though he performed type of transfer of power in 1996,
Right.
But doesn't mean he completed his term, because he only say 9 months, then 1 year.
Right.
And his former prime minister, René Garcia Preval, was elected president. He is the only president in the history of Haiti who completed his term twice. He was president in 1996, and then because President Aristide, he was so thirsty, I would say, at some point to get back to power. So there was some fraudulent election based on what was reported at that time, 2021. So he was re-elected as President Aristide, after President Preval completed his term. But because the opposition at that time totally disagreed with Aristide elections, so he got a second coup in 2004. So he didn't complete his term again. So we had to go through a transition from 2004 to 2006, where President René Garcia Preval were elected 1996 to 2001, is elected for his second term in 2006. So when he took power in 2006, he was elected for 5 years. That was going to go to 2011. But we have that big earthquake that struck the country and killed over 300,000 people and leave 1.5 million of people, without a roof on top of their head. So I think that's where the situation started to change, because there were a lot of money pledged on behalf of Haiti, including the United States, Canada, France, all of the friends, so-called friends of Haiti. They pledged money on behalf of Haiti for reconstructions, about $11 billion. But this money never get to Haiti. So people got frustrated, and they said, it's time for a real change. But with Michel Martelly, a former musician, so he was running for office, and he said, you know what, I'm bringing new blood, new energy, new perspective. I haven't been in politics before. I'm the right guy to solve the problem. But the problem with Haiti is a complex place. You cannot come from nowhere and become president and think you're gonna do something. So that's what happened to him. So no one knows what happened with the money that was pledged on behalf of Haiti. I think, from your end, or journalists in the U.S. can also do some investigation and find out what was happening. As you know, Bill Clinton was the special envoy of the United Nations in Haiti, during that period of time. So no money could be spent without his approval anyway. But we don't know where this money went. So because the population were really thirsty of a new blood, new perspective, new beginning, so they embraced Michel Martelly, even though he didn't have any experience in politics. So he was elected, and then that's where everything started, because he started as an amateur, not someone who didn't know what he's doing, trying everything. And his party that he created during that period of time, Parti Tête Calée Haïtien, I think that's what she wanted to say. That's under the same party that Jovenel Moïse been elected. So because there are so many misused of the Haitian resources, money, there is a money called Petro-Caribbean money we borrow from Venezuela, about $4 billion to continue the reconstruction of Haiti. Unfortunately, this money goes like, smoke in Haiti during that period Michel Martelly was president. So Jovenel Moïse, unfortunately, Martelly also didn't complete his term. He had to go like 3 months before his term completed, because the opposition refused that he organized the last election where Jovenel Moïse was elected. So Jovenel Moïse inherit, all the mess, all those catastrophes from all the previous governments, where the money from, the reconstruction, from the earthquake, and the money from Petro-Caribbean from Venezuela. So no one knows where this money goes. So that's how everything started. So he inherited that mess that he had to solve. Unfortunately, again, because Jovenel Moïse, he didn't have any experience at all in politics. He was just an entrepreneur. So they called him the banana guy because he had these big farms where he produced banana and export bananas. So because of his great project, he sold, out. So the former president really identified him as his successor. He said, "This is the guy I'm gonna support to win the elections." So when you come again with an amateur who doesn't have any experience in politics, only as an entrepreneur, so it's difficult to do diplomacy either with the international or the opposition. So from day one, he was elected. Because we have a biased constitutions also that they do a lot of amendments. We don't know which one is applied for now. So from the constitutions, you should be elected for 5 years. But Jovenel Moïse, instead of starting his term in February 7, 2016, he started his term in February 7, 2017, because there were a lot of turmoils, instability. So there was a government of transition for 1 year. But the opposition said, even though you started your term in 2017, the constitution said you are elected for 5 years. The 5 years started 1 year before you were elected. So you should leave on February 7, 2021. That's where the problem started. So he said, no, I was elected for 5 years. I need to leave in 2022. But the opposition said you need to leave 2021. So during his term, the problem is he was unable to organize elections. He was unable to even have a budget pass with the parliament, because we have a constitution that says when the president is elected, you need to choose a prime minister that needs to be confirmed by the National Assembly, the parliament. So that means to have your prime minister, you need to negotiate with the parliament. So at some point when you are president, you have a prime minister that you don't even have a control on. Your cabinet, you don't have control over anyone, because the parliament, the senators and the deputies, they are the one who proposing to suggest who should be Secretary of Commerce, Secretary of Interior, for all of them. So that's where his problem continued in 2017, 2018, and because the unemployment rate keep going higher and higher, goes and reach 80%, 84% for now, and all schools, no infrastructure, no reconstructions, and was unable to organize election to renew the 1/3 of the Senate. And then now we only have 1/3 of the Senate left, no General Assembly. So it's like he got all the power in his hands. So they started to consider him as a dictator. So they said all the conditions were met for him to be a dictator. No control with the parliament, no judiciary system, Supreme Court, like the equivalent of Supreme Court. We don't have that in Haiti because everyone was gone. So, but he started to attack the establishment, the economic power, because in Haiti, we still have 5% of the population who is not Black. So that 5% hold the economic powers. So once you attack this group, because he attacked them on contract they had with the government, that they didn't, they didn't pay taxes, they didn't, meet the expectations. So once he started to attack what we call the bourgeois in Haiti, the elite. So that's how, they tried to do everything that was possible and to say you should leave. But at the same time, we cannot consider Jovenel as now, unfortunately, that's a barbaric act, because that I strongly condemn. But you know what? It's like something you could say, oh, if it didn't happen that way, he would have left anyway before February 7, 2022, because the background was not solid enough. So where he comes from, no one would accept that he organized the elections at these, because the elections is scheduled for September 26th of this year. for the Senate, General Assembly, for municipality like the mayors, and also for presidential elections. So all of them February 26th, and no one from the opposition wanted to participate in the elections. So anyway, something was going to happen, but unfortunately, that the assassination that we didn't expect happened.
I would like something, Pat. Let me add one thing. The president, former president, unfortunately, Jovenel Moïse, he wasn't qualified enough to be president, but also in Haiti, there is a system where you have the elite and you have a fringe of the Haitian people who work with the elite and with the international to make sure they are the one who will choose the next president of Haiti.
Right.
So if they don't give you okay, if the international, this elite, what we call the bourgeoisie, la bourgeoisie haitienne, those the 5% who have all the money, all the state contract, they are the one who control everything, the border, right? Everything. So if they do not choose who's gonna be president, even though you were qualified, you will not be a president in Haiti. And that has been done since the Saline. Okay? So what happened to Jovenel Moïse in the first place is because they chose him as a puppet and he transformed along the way. When they thought they will ask him to do all the things they want him to do, and he refused along the way. But he started with some of them. And what Nolly mentioned is he is the first president who started to show the real figure, the real thing, the real face of the elite. And that he touched cases he dares. He dare touches the bourgeoisie. He dare touches the elite. So there is cases that he should not do because he's too weak or too small. He does not have enough power to do. So once he started, everybody knew where he will be going. And that's one thing. The second thing is we have a country where opposition do not want to sit with the government. So if you want to have a country, you want to have a democracy, and you said you will not sit down to negotiate, to find a solution, what you will do? It's complicated. What is happening today, this morning, as I mentioned, is despicable. It's barbaric because there is no way you can do politics by assassinate a president. You want the power. We were in a democratic government. You need the power, you go to the election. You have a president who do not do the job well. What you do, you work and you show you are the best. You have the best ideas, the best program, and you go to the election. But this is not what's happening in Haiti. You have an opposition that said they will not go to election, and he was trapped. He was trapped, as Nolly mentioned, with so many catastrophes, so many cases. And this is one thing before I finish my thought is what happened in Haiti. This is not the ordinary people who assassinate this president. It wasn't a demonstration in the street that went to his house.
Mhm.
If the world is listening, and I hope people who have power listen to this, has to stop. We cannot assassinate the president because we need to change the power. Period. Whether you agree with the president policy or not, if we are living in a democracy, if we do politics with liberty, freedom, respect of values, we cannot accept, we cannot give a pass to people who disagree with a president by killing him. Period.
Doing my in doing my reading today, I came upon a 2004 article in the Los Angeles Times, which, of course, in and of itself is astonishing, because the internet has such a long memory. And again, forgive my pronunciations, but I'll just quote one or two things very briefly from this article, and I wanted your reflection of how much has changed. Is it Patientville? Is that how it's pronounced in Haiti? Right. Patientville, which at the time of this writing was the home of the bourgeoisie. And when you talk about a small percentage of white Western and Northern Europeans who dominated industries like shipping and transportation and manufacturing. And again, from an American standpoint, as someone who was growing up in that period, who was just out of school, again, Jean-Bertrand Aristide captured the imagination of the Americans. A former priest, someone who occupied a role, at least in the American imagination, very similar to what the current Pope does in terms of the papacy, in that his embrace, at least from an American's perspective, how it was portrayed to us, of folks of ordinary or lesser means. And I guess there's a very famous quote from President Aristide. He labeled the bourgeoisie as rocks washed by cooling waters, while his people, the impoverished masses in the slums below, were the rocks in the sun taking the heat. Clearly, that bourgeoisie, that class, rebelled against that image, portraying, if you will, to most folks paying attention, the false notion that simply being good and working hard would land you an opportunity to arrive into the money classes. I think we know the fallacy of that. Is that the same environment that exists literally, 30 plus years later?
Nothing changed. Nothing has changed.
Let's say, unfortunately for the bourgeoisie, choosing Pétionville, it's, I think they really, unfortunately, think not further than the nose, because Pétionville is part of Port-au-Prince also. This city were built for only 250,000 people. Now we have 1/3 of the population. So we have a population of 12 million of people, but 1/3 of that population live in that area. So the bourgeoisie has no more, sophisticated, very nice place for themselves anymore, because just imagine they killed the president in that area this morning. So, I think it's really a good opportunity for politicians and also for the supporters from the international to these politicians to rethink the way we do politics in Haiti. And also it's because of the concentration of everything in one place. So if we want to solve the problem, is really going through some decentralization. So remove everything that concentrates in one place, which is Port-au-Prince, and try to move them to different areas.
One thing I would add, Pat, is former President Jean-Bertrand Aristide has a message when he started. He was like the Messiah because he speaks to the people, to the needs of the people. He made some mistakes and he wasn't supposed to be the poor versus the rich. He's supposed to be, let's be sharing, the resources. Let help the poor to get on their feet. Let give them education. So in the 21st century, the class we call the bourgeoisie, the elite in Haiti, they have their kids going to school in United States, France, Canada. They don't live in Haiti. They are only do commerce because they control the economic. They are the one who control everything. So they make money on the back of the poor people, and they have all their contract with the government because you cannot give contract to a newcomers. So they are the status quo, they are the establishment. So they are the one that also govern any president like a puppet.
Mhm.
So what Jean-Bertrand was saying 30 years ago, it is the same today, and it was because there is no infrastructure in Haiti, no electricity, no running water, clean water, no roads in Haiti.
But I mean,
And
if you were to focus on, if you were to share the focus on Jean-Bertrand Aristide,
yes,
let's say what Cass said that was true. He was, like you said, he was the Messiah, but he get that transformation when he get the first coup. Leaving Haiti where he was really taking care of the poor, but come to the US where he spent 3 years,
he came back with
he,
completely
a
stranger,
complete different
a
person.
complete different person. It
Right.
was like they brainwash him, right? So the same person that were like 3 years ago has changed completely. But as I mentioned before, Haiti's politics part is complicated, very, very complicated. And one of the big problems, a person like Jean-Bertrand Aristide, a person like Jovenel Moïse cannot be succeed in Haiti as a politician. They cannot because of their background. They cannot, unfortunately, because they are rebel. Jean-Bertrand Aristide, there was a group that took him like a puppet. When he gets into the power, he said, no, I have a message. I need to do this for the people. And when he started, and that's how he got the coup. And those class people who understand they could not keep Jean-Bertrand Aristide as a puppet, he has to go away. And this has happened to Jovenel Moïse, the same. When Jovenel Moïse started with his message, you feel, if you are a poor people, you feel this man is for me. You feel that this man will do something, but the system, the way it's built, you cannot have a message, you cannot have a program to deliver. You cannot deliver because of the way the constitution, the way of the establishment do things. A person like Jovenel Moïse could not be succeed. And unfortunately, we have a class politic that is, how I would say, the mercenaries of the elite. So they do the dirty work for them.
Right.
Because the divide between brothers and sisters, that's what helping the elite to keep the status quo. And also we have an international coalition against Haiti. So that has to stop. It has to stop. The only way Haiti, today we have an assassination of a president, and the problem Haiti will not solve with this. We need a revolution of Haitian people first, who will understand that they have to start to be the puppet of an international coalition of elite establishment and a group of Haitian intellectual Haitian people who keep also the country in captivity.
Hmm. You know, I've got in front of me a an analysis done by the World Bank just a few months ago, and to paint how bleak the picture is, because essentially, and this is I'm painting with a broad brush here. One can often judge the wealth of a nation not just in dollars, but by looking at the existence of a middle class. And it's fair to say that there is no middle class really in
No,
Haiti. Um, the
unfortunately.
the gross domestic product per capita of Haiti in U.S. dollars is merely just under $1,150. There's the World Bank has something called the Human Development Index, which is a set of indices that gives rankings of a nation, you know, in terms of poverty. Haiti ranked 170th out of 189 nations analyzed. It's the poorest country in Latin America and the Caribbean region, and incredibly enough, there was a contraction in their GDP, or I'm sorry, in their economy by 1.7% in the year before COVID, and it's so low that COVID decimated the economy, but the contraction was 3.8% because the starting base is so low. You know, where do we go from here? First of all, has anyone? I mean, I can only imagine the rumors are flying, speculation, chaos. Is from your perspective, has any one group emerged as the conspirators behind today's assassination?
One thing I would like to highlight from what you said about our economy. Unfortunately, Haiti is a country of consumations. I mean, we only import. We have that big problem of production, national production. So we don't produce enough. I When I was younger, I worked as a logistic manager in a factory where we produce garments, t-shirts for JCPenney, Hanes, Gildan, Kmart, and you know, for every 200 dozens of t-shirts per day that a line produce, they receive only $1.20
Wow.
for 200 dozens of t-shirts. And then, at that time I didn't travel yet. So, but when I came to the US and see the cost of a t-shirt in JCPenney, at Kmart, at Walmart, at Hanes, I said, it was totally slavery for those people. So let's say for our economy to move forward, it's we need to encourage national production for agriculture, because the United States contributed a lot in destroying our national production, like rice. We used to produce rice a lot, but they came and said our rice was not good. We need to import from them. We used to have all our pork, and they said, no, we need to kill all of them because those pork, the pigs that had give some malaria or some top over them illness pandemic.
Was the base of the
so they made sure they killed all of them until the last one. They did the same for the chickens, the hens. They do the same for the goats. So they totally destroyed our national production so we can start importing. And the hardest part is when they support a government, they support them with conditions. For example, exonerated taxes. So most of the products coming from the US, they don't pay taxes on them. So how this country gonna survive when they don't do taxes? How this country gonna survive? How the GDP gonna go higher when we only do services, we provide services. When they vote for something, let's say in 2005 they voted the Hope Act at the at the Congress here to say, oh, you know what, we're gonna create 100,000 jobs in Haiti because on the exportation, this is what we're gonna do. We're gonna remove taxes on everything produced from Haiti. While for us, we remove all taxes for everything coming from the US, but the US said, we are going to remove all the taxes coming from you too. But 50% of the products need to be done in Haiti. Unfortunately, we simply do assembly. When we produce the t-shirts, we don't do the fabric, we don't do the threads, we don't do the cartons, we don't know did they sell the insert but the fastener, we simply put them together. So that's represent less than 5% of the production. So we never benefits from that legislation from the United States. So those are trade this of trade relationship that benefits only one side, not the other side. So that's what's going on with the production, the economy of Haiti. So, but moving forward, as you said, for
where we go from there.
Where we go from here. Let's say, I mentioned that before. We were expected that something were going to happen, but not really the assassination of the president, because we knew he was not going to make it to 2022. Whether they were going
the
to
power, yeah, of course, we thought he will resign something.
Yeah. So, but we were thinking probably there would be a government of transition government with the opposition, or probably when he nominated a prime minister, that prime minister would take over so he can organize elections, because the opposition said that we were not going to do elections with you. And the US, Canada, and France will support him. We supported him to stay on power despite he couldn't deliver. They didn't really have him.
He was the president elected, so
they didn't have him at all to deliver. So he just stayed on power, hoping he would make it to 2022. So because he couldn't deal with the previous prime minister, he had an interim prime minister who were not nominated, while he was negotiating with the opposition, hoping he would find a common solution with the opposition for a new prime minister. So which approximately he did. He nominated last week a new prime minister from the opposition who were in charge of forming a new government so they can start working together to organize elections in the upcoming September. So now he has an interim prime minister who was not really nominated, just ensured the interim. Now he nominated someone who was not installed yet in the position, so doesn't have a new cabinet. So actually, we don't know who is the prime minister, because based on the constitutions, if the president is unable to lead, the prime minister take over. But now we have two prime ministers. We don't even know which one would be in charge. But with the constitution says if the president is not there, that's the previous, not the amendment, the constitution. The constitution of 1987 says if the president is unable to lead the country, the judge, the oldest judge from the Supreme Court, would lead the country. That's what happened in 2004. So, but currently, we don't have the president, the highest, the oldest or the highest judge in the Supreme Court, because he died last week from COVID-19. So we don't have a judge. And we have the General Assembly, that was the last, solution, saying if they don't have a judge, they don't have a prime minister, so the General Assembly would sit together to choose someone to ensure
we don't have one.
They don't have it because he didn't organize any elections.
He could not.
He could not organize any elections. So there isn't anyone from the parliament. They cannot choose someone. So I think we got in some Tory boys, something like where
this is a total chaos right now, Pat. It's a total chaos in Haiti. And where do we go from there? Today, everybody on the shocked. We are shocked from what happened. And what, you know, it wasn't only him, the violence. The country were at a point where it's there, if you felt like there was no leader, there was no one leading the country. There was so much violence. People, last week there was a journalist that been killed. There is gun violence. So, unfortunately, it's a shame to say kidnappings, gangs, and it's a total. I don't have a name
Disaster.
to say what was happening in the country before today.
Mm-hmm.
And today is the just a piece on the iceberg. This is we just see just a piece of the iceberg
Right.
because this is big. And when we say bigger, we have a population that lives in abject misery, poverty, and you have a class that keep uh, getting healthier, and you have a president that try to connect, those, and you have a class politics that says, I'm not going to see, they cannot see the bigger picture of what is happening to the country because they are blind, you know. Politics, you have to have compromise. We have to sit with, we don't agree, but you have to sit at the table
Right.
to express where you disagree and where we can find agreement. So I hope the opposition of Haiti, those who are happy he's no longer alive, and they know this is not the answer, the problem would not be solved. But I do hope they will sit down. That's my hope. The
Absolutely.
opposition will sit down as of now to find a way to get the country on track, which is elections. So we cannot continue to have transition, coup over coup, killing over killing for power. And this establishment, this status quo that have those people that feed him and nurture them. The international is part of it, that nurture the status quo for too long.
Right.
And the only victim of that is the Haitian people. The Haitian people are the only victim. They are the one who cannot send their kids to the luxurious school in the United States. They are the one who cannot travel when they are sick to get medical care in Dominican Republic. They are the one who cannot put the bread at the table.
Right.
So the real victim of all of those bad is the Haitian people,
Right.
not the 5%, not the intellectual class.
Now
A part of
it's stunning to read that one of the most significant public health successes in the last handful of years has, at some level, getting cholera under control. When you consider that cholera has not been a significant issue for first world nations in generations, to
Yeah.
see that as a bright spot is truly indicative of the depth of the poverty. I know it's tonight there exists a lot of confusion, a lot of chaos. I keep getting back to those words. You feel sort of helpless right now because you're removed from it. There's forces at work that we don't understand yet, and we may not for a number of days. So I'm grateful for your input. I'm grateful for your contribution, the two of you, to public life here in the United States, and your perspective is very, very valuable. And so I hope in in the coming days, if you have a few minutes, I know you're both very busy, and your primary concern obviously is family and friends and what's happening over there. But I'm grateful that you took the time tonight to share your perspective, and I hope we can stay in touch, not just over the next few days, but to continue to look at and study and analyze and think about, the Haitian American population here in the United States and what's happening to folks back in Haiti. I hope you'll continue to do that and apprise us of what's going on and the activities of your wonderful organization as you raise funds. I hope you'll keep us apprised of that so that we can do whatever we can to promote that. And these are terrible times, but I'm grateful for one thing, that we really started a dialogue tonight. I hope that's something we'll continue to do.
I really thank you for this opportunity to really share with the community here in Rhode Island. As President Biden, he released a statement this morning to condemn also this barbaric act of the assassination of the president, and also they are trying to work, even though he's interim, with the current prime minister, to see how they can move forward and keep things under control. I urge, our elected officials here in Rhode Island and all to really probably contact their representatives, or everyone here to contact their representative in Washington as well, to really keep an eye on Haiti and also help to fix that mess that they helped set up, because I think the United States play a major role in what's been going on in Haiti for the past 35 years, so from 1986 to now, especially most concentration to this from 2000, right after the earthquake up to now. So, and also by keeping the president, by supporting the president to stay in power, despite that there was so many instability and turmoils. So we urge the United States to support, even though we don't expect to have an occupation like we had in 1915, but it can be any type of support just to bring peace and stability back, and we can organize election and move forward from there. Even though we cannot, we would never forget this as the fifth president of the country assassinated on power. So he's the fifth one.
Well, again,
thank you, Pat, thank you for having us. What I would say is, I hope other mainstream media in the United States have another look into what's going on in Haiti, because we talk also only about Haiti when there is a catastrophe, when there is a major thing like this. And I hope also that the United States and other country that says they are Haitian friends, they do not go to impose their solution to Haiti, but they can support Haiti to find their own solution.
Right.
Because what is happening for so long is implementing Western solution in a country who is not ready for that.
Right.
So let the Haitian find the solution they need for the country. Start coming with solution made. It's the same way a lot of non-profit organizations do in Haiti. Come with solution made, and they know they're gonna solve the problem.
Right.
So Haiti has people who have qualification. We have only the economic part, which is also fabricated made it by the support of a lot of superpower.
Right.
Those we want the world to know the truth about Haiti. Haiti is a complicated country, but what is happening to this nation does not deserve that. So I hope every fellow Haitian American who are listening, let's take a step back to understand we may disagree, we can disagree with the policies, but we have one thing in common: the betterment of the Haitian people.
Right.
So with that, thank you for having us. And you know where to find us. We will be, even if we
Absolutely.
are busy, but we will always be available for you. Thank you, Pat.
No, thank you. I think if there's a theme, let's close on this theme, that it's time for a variety of foreign powers to recognize their responsibility and their culpability in creating the Haiti of today. But Haitians no longer want those same powers to graciously offer to steer change in Haiti, very often for their own profit, but merely atone for some of their sins by supporting Haitians' efforts to rescue Haiti. And that's I think that's a very, very powerful theme, laden with history and a lot of science and fact. So again, try and have a good night. I know this is difficult for you.
Thank you.
I know you've got a lot of family and friends there. We pray for Haiti, and let's find a way to work for Haiti. How about that?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank
Really
you.
appreciate it.
Thank
Have
you.
a good night.
Good night. Bye-bye.
Good.